Richard Kane stood at the window of his spaceship and looked at the stars. He had waited 30 years for this moment. Today he would meet aliens for the first time. Today he would speak for all humans. The ship was called Terra Nova, and it was beautiful. Captain Lisa Morgan had told him it was the best ship Earth had ever built. The hull was white and silver, and it moved through space like a bird. Inside the ship, everything was clean and new. The walls were painted light blue, and the floors were made of metal that shined like mirrors. Kane wore his best suit. It was dark blue with gold buttons and a small Earth flag on his chest. He was 50 years old and his hair was turning gray, but his eyes were still bright. He had studied alien languages for 20 years. He had read every book about space diplomacy. He was ready for this job. Captain Morgan walked up to him. She was a strong woman with short brown hair and steady hands. She had been flying spaceships for 15 years and she had never lost a crew member. Her uniform was black with silver stars on her shoulders. "Ambassador, we are almost there," she said. "The alien ships are waiting for us." Kane nodded and followed her to the bridge. The bridge was the most important room on the ship. It had big screens that showed space outside and computers that could talk to other ships. 6 crew members sat at their stations and watched the screens carefully. Dr. Helen Carter was already on the bridge. She was Earth's best scientist when it came to studying aliens. She was 40 years old and very smart. She wore thick glasses and carried a tablet computer everywhere she went. Her job was to help Kane understand how the aliens lived and what they wanted. Commander Paul Wright stood near the captain's chair. He was a soldier, but he was also a diplomat. His job was to protect Kane, but also to show the aliens that humans could be peaceful. He was tall and strong, and he never got angry even when things went wrong. His uniform was green with brown boots, and he carried no weapons. "Look at that," Dr. Carter said, and pointed at the big screen. Kane looked and saw something amazing. Alien ships were flying toward them. The ships did not look like human ships at all. They were curved and smooth like living things. They glowed with soft blue light, and they moved through space without making any sound. Kane counted 12 ships, and they were all different sizes. "Beautiful," Kane whispered. The largest alien ship was as big as a city. It had long arms that reached out like the branches of a tree. Smaller ships flew around it like birds around a nest. The whole group moved together like they were dancing. Captain Morgan sat down in her chair. "They are sending us a message," she said. The main screen changed, and Kane saw his first alien. It was tall and thin with 4 arms and skin that looked like green metal. Its head was long and it had many eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like music. "Welcome, humans," the alien said. "I am Captain Velthon of the ship Brightwing. We will guide you to our homeworld." Kane stepped forward. "Thank you, Captain Velthon. I am Ambassador Richard Kane. We are honored to meet you." The alien moved its 4 arms in a pattern. Dr. Carter had told Kane this meant the alien was being polite. "Follow us, Ambassador Kane. High Chancellor Thrixaval is waiting to meet you." The alien ships turned and started moving toward a large planet. The planet was purple and green with 3 moons. Kane could see cities on the surface that glowed like jewels. This was Vexhai, the capital world of the Yao Zephyrian Collective. As they flew closer, Kane felt nervous and excited. For 100 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not alone. There were many alien races living among the stars. The Zephyrian Collective was made up of 12 different alien species, and they controlled hundreds of worlds. "Tell me again about their culture," Kane said to Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter looked at her tablet. "The Zephyrians value knowledge above everything else. They have been exploring space for 3,000 years. They are peaceful and they welcome new species into their group. If they accept us humans, we'll have access to all their technology and knowledge." Kane nodded. This was what Earth needed. Human technology was still primitive compared to alien science. Earth had only been flying between the stars for 50 years. The aliens had been doing it for thousands of years. Commander Wright moved to stand beside Kane. "Remember, sir, they will test us. They want to make sure we are peaceful and trustworthy." "I know, Paul," Kane said. I have prepared for this my whole life. The alien ships led them to a huge space station that orbited the planet. The station was made of the same curved metal as the ships, and it glowed with many colors. Docking bays opened like flowers, and the Terra Nova flew inside. Kane and his team put on their best uniforms and walked to the airlock. The air on the alien station smelled like flowers and rain. Gravity was lighter than on Earth, so Kane felt like he was floating. The walls were covered with patterns that moved and changed colors. A group of aliens was waiting for them. Kane recognized Captain Velthan and saw other aliens he had never seen before. Some were tall and thin like trees. Others were short and round with fur like animals. One alien looked like it was made of living crystal. Ambassador Kane, Captain Velthan said, "Welcome to Unity Station. High Chancellor Thrixval will see you now." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The aliens had built their station like a work of art. Every wall had paintings and every room had music playing softly. Kane saw gardens with plants from many worlds and windows that showed the beautiful planet below. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room Kane had ever seen. The ceiling was so high he could not see the top. Hundreds of aliens sat in chairs that floated in the air. At the front of the hall was a platform where the most important aliens sat. High Chancellor Thrixval was bigger than the other aliens. His skin was dark green and covered with patterns that glowed like stars. His eyes were large and kind, and when he looked at Kane, he smiled. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall. "Richard Kane of Earth," the Chancellor said. "You have traveled far to meet us. Tell us why humans wish to join our collective." Kane walked to the center of the hall. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady. This was the moment that would change human history forever. "Honorable Chancellor," Kane began, "we come to you not as conquerors or beggars, but as neighbors who wish to learn and grow alongside you. Earth offers our knowledge, our friendship, and our promise to work for peace among all species." The aliens listened quietly. Some moved their arms or wings in ways that Dr. Carter had said meant they were interested. Others made soft sounds that might have been approval. Kane continued speaking. He told them about human history and culture. He explained how humans had learned to work together despite their differences. He offered to share Earth's art and music, and science. Dr. Carter stepped forward and showed the aliens examples of human technology. She had brought samples of human medicine and computer programs, and even some of Earth's best music. The aliens examined everything carefully and asked many questions. Commander Wright spoke about human military capabilities, but he was careful to explain that humans only fought to defend themselves. He showed them pictures of human colonies and space stations and explained how humans protected peaceful traders and explorers. When the presentations were finished, Chancellor Thrixval stood up. All the other aliens became quiet and watched him carefully. "Humans," he said. "Your species is young, but you have achieved much in a short time. Your technology advances quickly, and your people seem to adapt well to new situations. This is both impressive and concerning." Kane felt a small worry in his chest, but he kept smiling. "Chancellor, what concerns you?" "We have seen species like yours before," Thrixval said. "Species that grow and change rapidly. Sometimes this leads to great achievements. Sometimes it leads to great destruction. We must be careful. We understand." "Your caution," Kane replied. "Perhaps we could start with small steps, a cultural exchange or a trade agreement." The Chancellor nodded slowly. "Yes, we will consider this. But first we must learn more about your species. We will study your proposal and give you our answer in 7 days." Kane felt relieved. This was better than he had hoped. The aliens had not said yes, but they had not said no either. 7 days would give him time to show them that humans could be trusted. As the formal ceremony ended, Kane felt proud and hopeful. The alien leaders seemed wise and fair. Dr. Carter was already making friends with alien scientists. Commander Wright was talking with alien military officers about peaceful cooperation. The first day had gone well. Kane believed that in 7 days he would return to Earth with news that would make everyone celebrate. Humans would join the galactic community, and the future would be brighter than anyone had ever imagined. He had no way of knowing that some of the aliens were already planning to make sure humans never left this system alive. Kane woke up on his third day at Unity Station feeling hopeful. The aliens had been polite and interested in everything the humans had to show them. Dr. Carter had spent 2 days working with Zephyrian scientists, and she was excited about what she was learning. Commander Wright had made friends with several alien military officers who seemed impressed by human defensive strategies. The guest quarters were comfortable and strange at the same time. The bed adjusted itself to Kane's body, and the walls showed pictures of peaceful scenes from different alien worlds. Food appeared whenever he was hungry, and it always tasted perfect. The aliens were good hosts. Kane was reading reports from Dr. Carter when his door chimed. Captain Morgan entered looking worried. Her face was serious, and she carried a datapad in her hands. "Ambassador, we have a problem," she said. "The aliens have called an emergency meeting of their High Council. They want to see us in 1 hour." Kane felt his stomach tighten. "Did they say what this is about?" "No, sir, but our sensors picked up a lot of encrypted communications between alien ships last night. Something has changed." Kane got dressed quickly and met his team in the corridor. Dr. Carter looked confused and worried. Commander Wright was calm as always, but Kane could see tension in his shoulders. They walked to the Grand Assembly Hall in silence. The atmosphere in the hall was completely different from 3 days ago. Where before the aliens had been curious and welcoming, now they seemed cold and hostile. Many more aliens were present than before, and they all stared at the humans with unfriendly eyes. Chancellor Thrixval stood at the center of the platform, but his posture had changed. His 4 arms were positioned in what Dr. Carter had told Kane was a threat display. His glowing patterns were darker, and his large eyes looked angry. "Human delegation," the Chancellor said, and his musical voice now sounded harsh. "We have discovered disturbing information about your species. Information that changes everything." Kane stepped forward, trying to stay calm. "Chancellor, I don't understand. What information are you referring to?" Sub-Chancellor Velthan moved to stand beside Thrixval. Kane recognized him as the alien who had first greeted them. Now his friendly manner was gone, and he looked at the humans like they were dangerous animals. "Show them," Velthan said. A large holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. Kane gasped when he saw what it showed. The display was full of images from Earth, but they were not the peaceful pictures he had shared with the aliens. These were images of human wars and weapons and military bases. The pictures showed human soldiers in combat. They showed tanks and fighter planes and nuclear weapons being tested. They showed cities that had been destroyed by bombs and battlefields covered with bodies. All of Earth's violent history was displayed for the aliens to see. But Kane could tell immediately that something was wrong with the images. They were edited and changed to make humans look more aggressive than they really were. Pictures of military exercises were labeled as invasions. Defensive weapons were described as tools of conquest. The worst moments of human history were presented as if they represented all of humanity. "This is not accurate," Kane said firmly. "These images have been altered to misrepresent my species." "Altered?" Chancellor Thrixval's voice rose in anger. "Our intelligence-gathering ships spent months observing your world. What we found was a species that has turned their entire planet into a fortress. Your peaceful colonies are surrounded by weapons. Your defensive capabilities could destroy worlds." Dr. Carter stepped forward holding her tablet. "Honorable Chancellor, every species has conflicts in their past. What you are seeing represents our history, not our current intentions. Humans have been at peace for 50 years. "Peace," Sub-Chancellor Velthan laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "You call it peace, but you still build weapons, you still train soldiers. You still prepare for war even when no enemies threaten you." Commander Wright spoke for the first time. "Respected leaders, we build defenses because the universe is dangerous. Any species that explores space must be prepared to protect itself." "That is exactly what we feared you would say," Chancellor Thrixval replied. "Our scientists have also analyzed the genetic samples you provided. What they found disturbs us greatly." Another holographic display appeared showing complex charts and graphs. Kane could not understand the alien science, but Dr. Carter was studying the display with growing alarm. Your species possesses a genetic adaptation we have never encountered before, the Chancellor continued. When threatened or stressed, human bodies produce chemicals that enhance physical performance. Your strength increases. Your reflexes become faster. Your pain tolerance rises dramatically. Kane felt confused. Chancellor, this is simply how our species evolved. It helped our ancestors survive dangerous situations. It doesn't make us violent. It makes you unpredictable, Velthan said. Most species become weaker when injured or frightened. Humans become stronger. Most species seek to avoid conflict when faced with superior force. Humans become more dangerous when cornered. Dr. Carter was reading the genetic analysis on her tablet. Her face had gone pale and she was shaking her head. Richard, they're describing our fight-or-flight response, but they don't understand it. They think it makes us monsters. Chancellor Thrixval raised all four of his arms and the hall became completely silent. The collective has reached its decision. After careful study, we have determined that humanity represents an unacceptable risk to galactic peace. Kane felt his heart sink, but he tried one more time. Chancellor, please reconsider. We came here in peace. We offered friendship and cooperation. Judge us by our actions, not by your fears. Your actions. The Chancellor's patterns flashed bright red. Your actions include the systematic conquest of your own planet, the creation of weapons capable of destroying all life on worlds, the development of military doctrine specifically designed to defeat superior opponents through surprise and aggression. The alien was referring to human military strategies, but he was describing them in the worst possible way. Kane realized that everything humans did to protect themselves was being interpreted as preparation for conquest. We are not conquerors, Kane said desperately. We are explorers and diplomats and scientists. You are apex predators. Sub-Chancellor, Velthan said coldly. Your own scientists use that term to describe your species. Predators who have learned to cooperate only because it makes you more effective hunters. Kane looked around the hall at hundreds of alien faces staring at him with fear and disgust. He realized that nothing he could say would change their minds. They had already decided that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. What does the collective want from us? Commander Wright asked. Chancellor. Thrixval's voice became formal and final. The collective hereby rejects humanity's application for membership. Furthermore, we order your species to remain within your solar system permanently. Any human vessel found beyond the boundaries of your home system will be destroyed without warning. The words hit Kane like a physical blow. Not only were humans being rejected, but they were being imprisoned in their own solar system. Earth would be cut off from the galaxy forever. You cannot do this, Dr. Carter protested. You have no right to imprison an entire species based on genetic prejudice. We have every right, Chancellor Thrixval replied. The collective has maintained peace in this sector for 2,000 years. We will not allow a species of enhanced predators to threaten that peace. Kane tried to think of something to say that might change the situation, but his diplomatic training had not prepared him for this. The aliens were not being unreasonable or hostile in the normal sense. They were genuinely terrified of humanity, and nothing Kane could say would change that fear. We request safe passage back to our home system, Commander Wright said formally. Granted, the Chancellor replied. You have 24 hours to depart our territory. Any human vessel that returns will be considered an act of war. As the aliens began to file out of the hall, Kane felt numb with shock and failure. His mission to bring humanity into the galactic community had not just failed. It had resulted in humanity being marked as a dangerous species that could never be trusted. Dr. Carter touched his arm. Richard, this isn't over. There has to be another way. But Kane was watching Sub-Chancellor Velthan as the alien spoke quietly with military commanders near the platform. The aliens were already making plans, and Kane could see in their body language that those plans did not involve letting the human delegation return home safely. The collective had decided that humanity was too dangerous to join galactic civilization. Kane was beginning to suspect they had also decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to live. As they walked back to their guest quarters under heavy alien guard, Kane realized that his career as a diplomat was probably about to end, in the worst possible way. The aliens had seen something in humanity that terrified them. Kane was starting to think they might be right to be afraid. Kane and his team packed their belongings in silence. The alien guards watched them carefully but did not speak. The friendly atmosphere of their first days at Unity Station was completely gone. Now the aliens treated them like prisoners who might try to escape. Captain Morgan was waiting for them at the docking bay. Her face was grim and she moved with the careful alertness of someone expecting trouble. "Ambassador, we need to leave immediately. I don't like the way their warships are positioning themselves around the station." Kane looked through the viewport and saw what she meant. Dozens of Zephyrian military vessels had moved closer to Unity Station. Their weapons were not actively targeting the Terra Nova, but they were clearly ready for action. "How long to reach the hyperspace jump point?" Commander Wright asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, Captain Morgan replied. "But sir, I have to tell you something. Our sensors detected 3 alien ships following us when we arrived. They've been shadowing us the entire time we've been here." Kane felt a chill run down his spine. "You think they're planning to attack us?" "I think they never intended to let us leave," Morgan said quietly. Dr. Carter was studying her tablet again. She had been analyzing the alien genetic data they had shown during the meeting. "Richard, I've been thinking about what they said, about humans becoming stronger when threatened. They're not wrong, but they don't understand what it really means." "What, do you mean Helen?" "Every species has survival mechanisms. Most aliens seem to have evolved responses that make them submit or flee when faced with overwhelming force. But humans evolve differently. When we're cornered, we fight harder. When we're injured, we push through the pain. When we're outnumbered, we get creative." Commander Wright nodded. "It's what made us successful on Earth. We could survive in environments that would kill other species. But to aliens who didn't evolve that way, it looks like madness." Dr. Carter continued. "They see a species that becomes more dangerous when it should become less dangerous. It terrifies them." Kane understood what she was saying, but it didn't help their current situation. The Terra Nova was a diplomatic vessel with light shields and no weapons. If the aliens decided to attack them, there was nothing they could do, except try to run. Captain Morgan sealed the airlock and headed for the bridge. "All crew to battle stations," she announced over the intercom. Kane was surprised by the order, until he remembered that even diplomatic ships carried basic defensive equipment. The Terra Nova pulled away from Unity Station and began moving toward the edge of the star system. Kane watched through the view screen as the beautiful alien structures grew smaller behind them. He had come here with such hope, and now he was leaving in fear and failure. For the first 3 hours, everything seemed normal. The alien escort ships kept their distance and made no threatening moves. Kane began to think that maybe the collective would honor their promise of safe passage. Then Dr. Carter called out from her sensor station. "Captain, I'm reading energy buildups in the alien ships. They're charging their weapons." Captain Morgan's hands flew over her controls. "Red alert. All hands brace for evasive maneuvers." The first attack came without any warning. Bright blue energy beams lanced out from the alien ships and struck the Terra Nova's shields. The ship shuddered, and alarms began wailing throughout the corridors. Kane was thrown against the wall as the ship lurched to one side. Through the view screen, he could see 15 alien interceptors moving in perfect formation. Their sleek hulls gleamed as they fired again and again. "Shields down to 60%, Dr. Carter reported. "They're targeting our engines and communications array. They want us dead, but they're taking their time about it," Commander Wright said grimly. "They're herding us away from the hyperspace jump point." Kane pulled himself to his feet and stared at the attacking ships. After everything that had happened, he still found it hard to believe that the aliens would actually murder a diplomatic mission. The main view screen flickered, and Chancellor Thrixval's image appeared. But the alien leader looked completely different now. His polite diplomatic manner was gone, and his glowing patterns pulsed with what could only be described as cruel satisfaction. "Ambassador Kane," the Chancellor said, and his musical voice now sounded cold and deadly. The collective has reconsidered your species once more. We have decided that allowing you to return home would be a mistake. Kane stepped toward the screen. Chancellor, this is murder. We are diplomats under a flag of truce. You are representatives of a species too dangerous to be allowed to spread among the stars. Thrixaval replied. Your ship will be destroyed. Your homeworld will never know what happened to you. When humans eventually send other ships to look for you, they will find only empty space. Dr. Carter leaned over Kane's shoulder. They're not just planning to kill us. They're planning to make sure Earth never learns the truth about what happened here. The alien attacks intensified. More energy beams struck the Terra Nova, and this time Kane could hear the hull groaning. Under the stress. Captain Morgan was pushing her ship's engines to their limits, but the diplomatic vessel was never designed for combat. Shields down to 30%, the helmsman called out. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Commander Wright moved to the tactical station even though the ship had no weapons to fire. Captain, if we can reach the asteroid field near the 4th planet, we might be able to hide long enough to send a message to Earth. Negative, Captain Morgan replied. They'll intercept any transmission we try to send. Our only hope is to get someone home alive. Kane realized what she was planning. The escape pods were equipped with long-range transmitters and emergency supplies. If they could launch the pods, during the chaos of the ship's destruction, one might escape detection long enough to reach human space. Another massive impact shook the Terra Nova, and the lights went out for several seconds. When the emergency power came back on, Kane could see that Captain Morgan was badly injured. Blood was running down her face and her left arm hung at an odd angle. Captain Dr. Carter moved to help her, but Morgan waved her away. I'm fine. Get to the escape pods. If any of us survive, this Earth needs to know what really happened here. Kane hesitated. He had never abandoned his crew before, and the idea of leaving them to die while he escaped felt wrong. But he knew that Morgan was right. Someone had to. Survive to warn Earth about the alien threat. Paul Helen, come with me. Kane ordered. Commander Wright shook his head. Sir, someone needs to buy you time to escape. I'll stay here and try to keep the ship running as long as possible. Kane wanted to argue, but another explosion rocked the ship, and he knew there was no time. He grabbed Dr. Carter's hand and they ran toward the escape pod bays. Behind them he could hear Commander Wright shouting orders to the surviving crew members. The corridor to the escape pods was filled with smoke and sparks flew from damaged electrical systems. Kane and Dr. Carter had to climb over debris and squeeze through twisted metal to reach the pod bay. 3 escape pods remained functional, and Kane chose the one with the best navigation system. As they climbed into the small pod, Kane heard Captain Morgan's voice over the intercom one last time. All hands abandon ship. Reactor core critical. Hull failure imminent. The escape pod launched just as the Terra Nova's reactor exploded. Through the small porthole, Kane watched his ship die in a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the local star. Captain Morgan and Commander Wright and 15 other crew members died with it. The explosion provided enough confusion for the escape pod to slip away undetected. Kane activated the pod's stealth systems and set a course for human space. The trip would take 6 months and they had barely enough supplies to survive. As the pod drifted through space, Kane stared at the wreckage of the Terra Nova and felt something he had never experienced before. It was not just anger or grief, though. He felt both of those things. It was a cold, calculating rage that seemed to sharpen his thinking rather than cloud it. Dr. Carter was unconscious from the escape pod launch, but she was breathing steadily. Kane checked their supplies and navigation system and began planning for the long journey home. He would survive this. He would reach Earth. And he would tell humanity exactly what the Zephyrian Collective had done to their peaceful diplomatic mission. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had shown humanity that the galaxy was not a place for diplomats and dreamers. It was a place where only strength mattered. And they had just taught Earth's most diplomatic species how to speak the language of strength. Kane activated the pod's recording system and began documenting everything that had happened. When he reached Earth, the human government would learn that their ambassador had been murdered along with his entire crew. They would learn that humanity had been judged too dangerous for galactic citizenship. Most importantly, They would learn that the collective considered humans such a threat that they were willing to commit murder to keep humanity trapped in their home system. The aliens thought they had solved their human problem by destroying one diplomatic ship. They had no idea that they had just created a much bigger problem. Kane settled back in his seat and began the long journey home. He was no longer Earth's ambassador to the galaxy. He was now the sole survivor of an act of war, and his testimony would change everything. 6 months later, a patrol ship from the Human Defense Force found Kane's escape pod drifting near the edge of human space. The pod's life support systems had failed 3 weeks earlier, and Kane was barely alive. The rescue team found him in a deep sleep that his body had created to survive without oxygen. Dr. Susan Blake worked for 2 days to save Kane's life at the medical station on Luna Base. When he finally woke up, the first thing he asked for was a secure communication link to Earth. His voice was weak, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. Admiral Jack Morrison arrived at Luna Base within hours of hearing that Kane was alive. Morrison was the commander of all human military forces, and he was a careful man who did not believe in taking unnecessary risks. But when he listened to Kane's story, his face grew darker with each word. Kane played the recordings he had made during the escape pod journey. The evidence was complete and undeniable. The Zephyrian Collective had murdered a peaceful diplomatic mission and declared that humanity would never be allowed to leave their home system. President Lauren Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Kane was still too weak to travel, so he testified through a secure video link from his hospital bed. The council chambers were silent as Kane described the aliens' betrayal and the death of his crew. "They called us apex predators," Kane said, his voice getting stronger as he spoke. "They said we become more dangerous when threatened. They were afraid of what humans might do if we were allowed to spread among the stars." General Nathan Brooks commanded the human colonial marines, and he had fought in 3 different colonial wars. He studied the tactical data from the Terra Nova's final battle with professional interest. "The aliens made several critical errors," Brooks said. "They assumed our diplomatic vessel represented our military capabilities. They also assumed we would respond to their threat the same way other species have responded." Admiral Morrison activated a holographic display that showed human military installations throughout the solar system. "President Hayes, we have been preparing for hostile first contact for 50 years. Our industrial capacity exceeds anything the collective has, and our weapons are designed specifically to fight technologically superior opponents." Kane struggled to sit up in his hospital bed. "Council members, I spent my entire career believing that problems could be solved through negotiation and compromise. The aliens murdered that belief along with my crew. They wanted to see what humans do when we are threatened. I say we show them." President Hayes was a former military officer herself, and she understood what Kane was really saying. "Admiral Morrison, what would a military response require?" Morrison had been planning for this possibility since the day humans first detected alien signals. "Madam President, we can mobilize the largest military force in human history within 6 months. Every colony world has defensive fleets and ground forces. Our shipyards can be converted to produce warships instead of exploration vessels." Dr. Monica Price was Earth's leading expert on alien technology. She had studied every piece of data the Terra Nova had gathered about Zephyrian science and weapons. "The aliens' plasma-based weapons are impressive, but they are designed to fight other energy-based technologies. Our kinetic weapons and missile systems will be largely immune to their standard defenses." Kane listened to the military discussions with growing satisfaction. The aliens had been right to fear humanity, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had given humans a reason to become everything they were afraid of. "There is something else," Kane said. "The recordings show that the collective has destroyed other species they considered dangerous. We are not their first victims. They have been committing genocide for centuries." This revelation changed everything. The alien threat was not just directed at humanity. The Zephyrian Collective was a genocidal empire that eliminated any species they thought might challenge their control. President Hayes stood and looked around the council chamber. "The vote is before us. Do we mobilize for war against the Zephyrian Collective?" The vote was unanimous. For the first time in human history, the species was going to war as a united force. Over the following weeks, Earth's colonies received unprecedented mobilization orders. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels and passenger liners were retooled to construct battleships and destroyers. Research stations that had been studying peaceful technologies began developing new weapons systems. Captain Kevin Barnes received command of the first new warship to come out of the orbital shipyards. The ship was called Retribution, and it was designed for one purpose only. Barnes had served on exploration vessels for 15 years, but now he studied weapons systems and battle tactics. "Captain, your mission is simple," Admiral Morrison told him during the briefing. "Find every Zephyrian military installation within 100 light-years of Earth and destroy them. Leave nothing operational." But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Professor Alan Stewart worked at the Advanced Human Studies Institute, and he had been researching the genetic traits that made humans unique. When he learned what the aliens had said about human biology, he began a new project. The Zephyrians were correct about human stress response, Stewart explained to a gathering of military leaders. Under threat conditions, human bodies produce chemical compounds that enhance reaction time, increase pain tolerance, and improve decision-making speed, but we can artificially trigger and amplify this response. The first volunteers were soldiers from elite special forces units. The enhancement process was experimental and dangerous, but the results were remarkable. Enhanced human soldiers could process information faster than any known alien species. They could continue fighting with injuries that would kill most other beings. Most importantly, they could maintain perfect tactical thinking even in chaotic combat situations. Kane watched the test footage from his hospital bed and felt something approaching wonder. The enhanced soldiers moved like living weapons. They anticipated enemy actions before those actions were taken. They coordinated their attacks with inhuman precision. "Professor, how many soldiers can we enhance?" Admiral Morrison asked. "Every human being carries the genetic markers, sir," Stewart replied. "We are essentially weaponizing our own evolutionary advantages." Within 3 months, the first wave of enhanced human forces was ready for deployment. Kane had recovered enough to visit the training facilities, and what he saw there convinced him that the aliens had been right to fear humanity. Enhanced human soldiers practiced combat scenarios against simulated alien opponents. They moved through the exercises like dancers performing a deadly ballet. When one soldier was injured, the others immediately adapted their tactics to compensate. When they were outnumbered, they became more creative and aggressive instead of retreating. "They are magnificent," Kane said as he watched a squad of enhanced Marines overcome odds that should have been impossible. Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. "The aliens wanted to see what humans do when we are cornered. Now they will learn." The human battle fleet assembled at staging areas throughout the outer solar system. Hundreds of warships armed with kinetic weapons that could punch through any known defense. Thousands of enhanced soldiers trained for combat in alien environments. Support vessels loaded with supplies for extended campaigns far from home. Kane requested permission to join the fleet as a military advisor. His diplomatic career was over, but his knowledge of alien culture and tactics would be valuable in the coming war. President Hayes approved his request personally. "Ambassador, you have earned the right to see this through to the end." Kane put on a military uniform for the first time in his life. The dark gray fabric felt strange after years of wearing diplomatic blue, but it also felt right. The aliens had changed him from a man who sought peace into a man who understood that sometimes peace could only be achieved through strength. As the first battle groups prepared to depart for Zephyrian space, Kane stood on the observation deck of the command ship Vengeance and thought about his former crew. Captain Morgan and Commander Wright and Dr. Carter had died believing that diplomacy could solve any problem. Kane now understood that they had been wrong. Some problems could only be solved through the application of overwhelming force. Some species only understood the language of strength. The Zephyrians had taught humanity that lesson by murdering Earth's ambassador and his crew. Now humanity was going to teach the aliens what it really meant to threaten a species of apex predators. The war fleet jumped to hyperspace and headed toward alien territory. Behind them, Earth continued to build more ships and enhance more soldiers. The industrial might of an entire species was now focused on a single goal. The Zephyrian collective had wanted to keep humanity trapped in their home system. Instead, they had created an enemy that would not stop until every alien who had participated in the betrayal was dead. Kane smiled as he watched the stars change outside the viewports. The aliens were about to learn what humans really did when they were threatened. They were about to discover that cornering apex predators was the last mistake they would ever make. The human warfleet struck 17 Zephyrian star systems at exactly the same moment. Admiral Morrison's strategy was simple and devastating. Hit every military target simultaneously, so the aliens would have no time to coordinate defenses or call for help. Captain Barnes led the assault on Crix Prime, where the alien ships that had destroyed the Terra Nova were based. The Retribution emerged from hyperspace with its weapons already charging and its enhanced crew working with perfect coordination. "Target the command ship," Barnes ordered, as alien vessels scrambled to respond to the surprise attack. "I want the ship that gave the order to murder Ambassador Kane's crew." The Zephyrian defenders tried to fight back, but their tactics were designed for fighting other species that valued survival above victory. Enhanced human crews pressed their attacks even when their own ships were damaged. What should have been retreats became devastating ramming attacks that destroyed alien vessels. On the bridge of the command ship, Vengeance Admiral Morrison coordinated the fleet-wide assault while Kane watched the tactical displays. The former diplomat had become an expert on alien psychology and military capabilities during the journey to Zephyrian space. Admiral Captain Rodriguez, of the heavy cruiser Justice, reported over the communication system. "We have captured the main Zephyrian communication hub. They are trying to send distress calls to their other colonies. Jam all transmissions." Morrison replied immediately. "I want complete communication blackout. The collective learns about this attack when we decide to tell them." Dr. Price served as the fleet's intelligence officer, and she had been analyzing captured alien databases during the voyage. What she found made the human assault even more urgent and justified. "Admiral, we have confirmed our worst fears," Price reported. "The Zephyrians have systematically eliminated at least 12 other species over the past 1,000 years. Every species that showed rapid technological advancement or unusual survival traits was marked for destruction." Kane studied the alien records with growing fury. The collective was not just a threat to humanity. It was a genocidal empire that had been murdering entire civilizations for centuries. Every species that might have challenged Zephyrian dominance had been eliminated before they could develop space travel. "How many billions have they killed?" Kane asked quietly. "We may never know," Price replied, "but based on these records they have committed genocide on a scale that defies comprehension." The human advance continued with relentless precision. Enhanced soldiers demonstrated capabilities that terrified alien defenders. Human troops could fight effectively with injuries that would incapacitate most species. They adapted their tactics in real time and became more creative and aggressive when faced with superior numbers. General Brooks personally led the assault on the Zephyrian homeworld of Vex High. The planet's orbital defenses had never been breached in 2,000 years of warfare, but human forces pushed through them like they were made of paper. Enhanced Marines moved through alien cities with inhuman efficiency. When one soldier fell, 2 others immediately took his place. When they encountered obstacles, they found ways around them that alien defenders could not predict or counter. The fighting was brutal, but one-sided. Zephyrian soldiers were trained to fight enemies who would retreat when faced with overwhelming force. Human soldiers had been enhanced to become more dangerous when cornered or outnumbered. In the Grand Assembly Hall, where Kane had once offered friendship, Chancellor Thrixval now cowered before human soldiers whose enhanced abilities made them appear almost supernatural. General Brooks allowed Kane the honor of accepting the alien leader's surrender. Kane looked down at the defeated Chancellor and felt no satisfaction or mercy. "You said humans become more dangerous when threatened. You were absolutely correct. But you made one fatal error in your calculations." "What error?" Thrixval whispered through his universal translator. "You assumed we would be satisfied with simple survival," Kane replied coldly. "Humans don't just adapt to threats. We eliminate them completely." The final phase of the human campaign targeted every world and installation controlled by the Zephyrian Collective. Within 8 months of the first attack, the mighty empire that had dominated a quarter of the galaxy was reduced to scattered refugee populations, fleeing human advance forces. The speed and thoroughness of the human victory shocked every remaining species in known space. The Collective had seemed invincible for 2,000 years. Humanity had destroyed it in less than a year. Admiral Morrison accepted the formal surrender of the remaining Zephyrian military commanders aboard the Vengeance. The ceremony was broadcast throughout human space and to every surviving alien world as both a celebration and a warning. But Kane had one final message to deliver. The former diplomat who had become an architect of Galactic War stood before representatives of dozens of species who had served under Zephyrian rule. The Zephyrian Collective is dissolved as of today, Kane announced with the authority of a species that had just proved its dominance. Any species that wishes peaceful relations with humanity will be welcomed as equals. Any species that threatens human interests or commits genocide will share the Collective's fate. The alien representatives listened in terrified silence. Many of their species had participated in or benefited from Zephyrian genocides over the centuries. Now they faced judgment from a species that had demonstrated its willingness and ability to destroy civilizations. Kane continued his speech, but his tone softened slightly. Humanity did not want this war. We came to you in peace seeking friendship and knowledge. You responded with fear and murder. You taught us that strength is the only language the galaxy understands. Some alien delegates tried to claim they had been forced to cooperate with Zephyrian policies. Others begged for mercy and promised to never again threaten any species. Kane listened to their pleas with the same cold calculation he had learned during his months in the escape pod. The age of Zephyrian dominance is over, Kane declared. The age of human dominance begins now. Those who accept this reality and work for genuine peace will prosper. Those who do not will be eliminated. As the human fleet began its journey back to Earth, Kane stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance and reflected on how completely his life had changed. He had left Earth as Ambassador Richard Kane, seeking to bring humanity into the galactic community through diplomacy and compromise. He was returning as the architect of humanity's emergence as the galaxy's newest and most powerful empire. The peaceful explorer had become a conqueror because the galaxy had given him no other choice. The other species had been right to fear humanity, but for the wrong reasons. They thought humans were dangerous because they became stronger when threatened. The truth was far worse. Humans were dangerous because they learned from their enemies and adapted faster than any other known species. The Zephyrians had shown humanity that the galaxy was ruled by fear and violence. So humans had become more frightening and more violent than anyone else. The aliens had taught them that genocide was an acceptable tool of policy, so humans had committed genocide more efficiently than it had ever been done before. Kane watched the stars pass by outside the viewport and thought about the crew of the Terra Nova. Captain Morgan and Commander Wright and Dr. Carter had died believing in the possibility of peaceful coexistence between species. Their deaths had taught humanity that such beliefs were naive and dangerous. The galaxy was not a place for diplomats and dreamers. It was a place where apex predators ruled through strength and fear. The Zephyrians had forced humanity to accept this reality. Now, every remaining species in known space would live under human protection or human dominance. There would be peace, but it would be peace enforced by the threat of overwhelming retaliation against anyone who disturbed it. Kane had spent his entire career studying alien cultures and learning how to communicate with different species. Now he understood that there was only one form of communication that every species understood perfectly. The Zephyrian Collective had killed Earth's ambassador. The annihilation that followed was not an act of revenge. It was a demonstration that some species should never be threatened. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage in terms that no one would ever misunderstand. The age of human dominance had begun, and it would last until another species proved strong enough to challenge it. Kane smiled grimly as Earth appeared on the long-range sensors. He was coming home as the survivor of humanity's first and last attempt at galactic diplomacy. Every future contact with alien species would be conducted from a position of unquestionable strength. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans did when they were cornered and threatened. Now they knew. When you back apex predators into a corner, they don't just fight their way out. They take over the entire territory and make sure no one can ever threaten them again.